All right. Good evening. Welcome in, everybody. This is The Slate. We are a DraftKings program. We will take you up until 6 o'clock or shortly before then here on this Friday. Brendan Glasheen, Matt LaMarca, Gary and Thorne. Full trio for your Friday to get your weekend activated and off to, hopefully, a good start. We'll dive into a bunch of stuff. Not much going on in the NFL from a news standpoint. The combine is getting started. As we know, a lot of combine coverage and who the top prospects are. So if we do have interest in that, we can get to that. But we figured we could spend some time on the Major League Baseball. It's no longer the offseason, right? Spring training is underway. The new rules, that's been fun to follow. So we'll dissect some futures market stuff in baseball. And then we'll spend some time on the NBA with the games coming up tonight. Some good games tonight in the association. So that's what we got for you. And if you have anything, feel free to chime in, as we often encourage over on YouTube, live chat, and Twitch as well. That's where we are. Also streaming live at DK Live, the DK Nation platform on the Twitter machine. So we'll start as a jumping off point, LaMarca.
Yeah.
How much spring training have you consumed? I haven't consumed a lot of full games, but I've checked in. You're shaking your head already. This is off to a great start, but I'll tell you what, I'm popping into games, looking at clips, and I'll tell you something that I've been thinking about.
Okay.
For what it's worth. This whole pitch clock thing, there's an angle to be had, at least for the month of April. We'll see how the umpires, how seriously they take this, because it seems like they're putting their foot down here early, which is good, I think. Not just fading slower working pitchers. And what I mean by that is don't fade them by just taking the other side on a money line, first five money line, or a full game money line, or a total under or over, because in theory, if they're working faster than they normally have to, there could be more offense, more balls in play. That's the whole idea here. I'm almost looking at, and this is nothing we can play now, but taking pitcher strikeout unders, because in theory, with the ball being more in play, location won't be as finite. And the pitcher can't do circles around the mound to rev it up. Say they throw a fastball in at 99. When they get back on the rubber, they can't rev back and throw 100 the next pitch and throw 99 again. That might dip down a little bit. So I think pitchers do have an edge early on. Hitters got to stay in the box, as we know, but the hitters, I feel, really put this all into motion because of the stepping out and, the charades, like Noma, Noma would come out, wrap it. But you tell me, I feel like the pitcher here might have an edge, like Max Scherzer striking out a guy in 27 seconds. There was a Yankees reliever who struck somebody out in
20 seconds.
20 seconds. So that to me, so as I say that, yes, there are situations where a reliever could come in, because relievers are, some relievers work really slow, but starters that work slow, your Ohtanis, your Giolitos, your Alek Manoahs, I feel like that could be something to look at least for the first month of the season.
Yeah, I mean, lots to unpack there. I think the pitch clock stuff, from what I have seen, which admittedly is not a ton, it's kind of just what people are posting on Twitter and stuff like that. I'm not scouring through all these box scores, but it seems like it has had more of a negative impact on the hitters than it has the pitchers, in my opinion.
Yep.
You saw a, bases loaded situation, full count end because a batter didn't get into the batter's box quick enough. You've seen
Boston, Boston, Atlanta. Yep.
Boston, a couple of these quick strikeouts recently. So if anything, I think that the batters might be the ones that are looking to adjust a little bit more in the start of the year, because, as we've, just kind of baseball nomenclature is, you want to disrupt the timing of the pitcher, right? And there I am. And with the pitch clock now, you really can't do that. You have to work at the pitcher's tempo. So I think that ultimately I would be looking to potentially back some unders at the start of the year. I mean, unders were really profitable to start last year as well.
That's right.
The ball doesn't travel as well in the colder months. We know that the baseball hasn't been as juiced as it was, at least for last year. So I'm leaning towards a lower scoring first month of the year. But again, it's all stuff that it's great to see it in spring training. Like, we need to see a little bit how it happens in Major League as well. But I won't be hesitating to fire on some unders to start the year here.
Gary, and you got a big picture thought on just the rules and what you've been able to consume at this point in spring training?
I mean, in general, like biggest picture, I just like it. I think it was necessary, and I think it's going to bring a lot to the game. I think it just makes it more action packed. It's honestly, I'm finding it's obviously not basketball, but just in the sense that it's hard to even look away or look down at your phone, sort of your usual cadence of watching a baseball game. You miss like a pitch and you're like, oh, wow, that was my internal clock is not expecting another pitch at that rate. So I think it's been good. And honestly, from the data we've gotten, and it's only about 8 or 9 days worth of data at this point, it already seems like players are starting to normalize this. And that's not to say there isn't going to be some viral moment in the first week of the regular season in April. But of the around 150 violations we had coming into today's spring training games, most were on the pitchers. However, a lot of the 111 violations pitchers have accumulated were not even ones you would really see. It wasn't so much going against the pitch clock in between pitches. It was throwing a pitch to start the inning on time. That has been the most common sort of infraction by pitchers, is just not getting on the mound, not finishing your warm-up pitches quickly enough, and then not getting that first pitch off. So to me, that's even like the simplest area to fix. It's not that these things are happening in a 1-2 count all that often where pitchers aren't throwing the ball fast enough. It's just that they're not getting out to the mound quickly enough to start the inning. I think that's probably the easiest thing they can fix. So, I mean, we've already seen, I think it was the first 60 or 70 spring training games, we were averaging 1.6 violations per game. That's already down to 1.4 violations across the last 60 or 70 games. Like, yep. I don't want to say they're going to get a handle on this completely, but we saw it throughout the minor leagues, and listening to AAA players talk about this and some AAA broadcasters talk about this, it seems like there was a, 3-4 week period where it wasn't anarchy by any means, but there were a lot of these violations. And then towards the end of the season, like late August, early September, you were maybe seeing a violation once every 2 or 3 games. So I don't really know if it's going to have all that much of an impact. I think LaMarca's on the right track here for me when it comes to at least looking at like, early season betting futures. I think this is a bigger adjustment for the hitters just because the pitcher is the one who's still dictating the pace of the game, even if they have to dictate it a little faster than they would normally want. I mean, we saw today Max Scherzer kind of put on a display where really just straight out clock manipulation against the Nationals, where he forced a batter into calling his only timeout. And then he was just sitting in his like ready position on the mound, waiting for this guy to step back in the box, knowing that as soon as he came alert to the pitcher, Scherzer was going to throw 96 down the middle, and he struck him out because of course he did. So I really do think smart pitchers will be able to manipulate this a little bit. And I think Scherzer's almost going to have fun manipulating this a little bit. And let's be honest, like even just in the normal sort of sense of spring training, pitchers are always ahead of hitters at this time of the year. And generally speaking, that carries over into the first couple weeks, maybe even month of the MLB season when you combine that with the cold weather on the East Coast. So yeah, I think unders could be the way to go. Maybe there are a couple guys, like you mentioned, Glash. I know Ohtani in particular is a really slow starting pitcher because a lot of the guys who are the slowest tend to be relievers. It's a bunch of closers and Ohtani. But, someone even like Kevin Gausman, who has been specifically named in terms of the MLB's new interest in calling as many balks as possible. Like that might be an angle to explore. I don't know, but I really do think most of these guys are going to be perfectly fine. And there really isn't going to be that much of an impact on the game in general. Because again, just because you're getting more pitches going doesn't even mean there's going to be more contact. I don't think that's what the problem, or I mean, that could be what the problem is to some people, but I don't think that's what this was trying to improve. We're just trying to like make these strikeouts happen faster when they inevitably happen. So I don't necessarily think that's going to be more runs because the game's going faster.
I'm watching the Scherzer clip now from, I think it was today when the Mets played the Nationals.
Yeah.
And he's holding, and he's got runners on at second and third, and he's in the set. Now, I think the hitter, if I have this right, I'm still trying to get all of this.
So he gets to call timeout once. So basically, Scherzer's holding on to that ball. Scherzer's ready at like 13. So he doesn't have to start his motion to home plate until that clock is down to 1. So he was going to be willing to stand there for 12 seconds to mess with this hitter's timing, but you get 1 timeout per batter. So I think it was Riley Adams. I think Riley Adams calls timeout with like 7 seconds left. He puts a foot out of the box, and Scherzer's still standing there in his windup, ready to pitch. And Adams knows this. He's staring out at him going, as soon as I get into this box, he's going to throw. So he basically legally quick pitched him and struck him out with like a 96-mile-an-hour fastball. I mean, I think Scherzer had quotes coming into the season like, I'm going to find a way to manipulate this. That's who Max Scherzer is.
I love it. He's the same guy. If we're going to be fair, we're giving him a compliment. He was the same guy who was getting all, remember him last year when he's like, check my whole uniform if you need to for the spider stuff. But
he literally tried to take his pants off last year or 2 years ago. So
that's just like, that's the other side of the spectrum, right? Where he is, okay, well, I'm just going to embrace it now. So I from that standpoint, I love it because if you, the idea is to create a competitive edge, and Scherzer is the right guy for that. So, so Garion's point, I think, is a point that should be brought up, because if you want to look in the futures market now, Gary, what you're saying is it's not going to impact all that much in terms of how you might want to pick a win total, regular season total, or a player to hit X amount of home runs. Like Aaron Judge has said at 45.5 for this coming season, just using him as an example. He's the first name that pops up here. But anything that you guys have, any latest developments as far as what you're looking at in the futures market?
I mean, I just think it's interesting how some of these win totals have already moved. I mean, they've only been up for 10, 11 days now, maybe even 2 weeks. And, we've got one that I jumped all over early was the Twins. They started at 81.5. They're now up to 83.5. I think Boston, maybe it was just because, I work at this company and I follow a lot of people who work at this company. And it seemed like everyone and their mom and their uncle wanted to bet the Red Sox over at 77.5. It's now up to 78.5. So, these things move quick.
I got it at 76.5. So that makes me feel better.
There you go. And then even the White Sox, I think that's a team that there's a lot of, back and forth hemming and hawing on the White Sox. And that number opened at 82.5. It's now 83.5 plus money to the over. So again, I think it's interesting which teams have sort of gathered some steam and enough money to maybe move these win totals. But the Twins in particular, that one just seemed incredibly low. And again, once we start getting, all these very reputable statistical sites releasing their win projections for the season, I mean, you had the Twins sitting at 81.5 wins, and Baseball Prospectus's PECOTA projections had the Twins winning 88 games. Like, you just never see a disparity that big. So it's not surprising to see that the money came in quickly and now the books are adjusting.
Marka, any win totals that you're eyeing besides the one Gary mentioned? Well, Gary mentioned he's on the Twins, but he's got he's just noting the changes with the White Sox and the Red Sox as well.
Yeah, one team that I've really been monitoring the last couple days, a team that I think I'm ultimately going to make some bets on, be it a win total over under or maybe to win the division. But I'm starting to really warm up to the Angels. I think that you look at this team and the amount of talent that they possess at this point, it's impressive, right? And I think the only reason people aren't more excited about the Angels is because every year they disappoint pretty massively. But just because that's been their, sort of MO over the past half decade, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to continue. They could have a year where Trout and Ohtani both stay healthy, and maybe even Anthony Rendon rediscovers something. But the biggest weakness that this team has had has been pitching. And I think if you look at their pitching staff right now, this is probably their best collection of arms in quite some time, right? You have Shohei Ohtani, you've got Tyler Anderson, who they brought in from the Dodgers. And while I don't think anybody expects Tyler Anderson to repeat his numbers from last year, he's still a significant upgrade from some of the guys that were pitching for Los Angeles last year. Patrick Sandoval had a solid year. Reed Detmers is fine. Jose Suarez turned in a good, I think that for the first time in a while, LA has some arms to support the big offensive bats that they have in their lineup. So you can get them at a really big number to win the division. That's part of what comes with playing with a team like the Astros in your division. So you could take the over on their win total, or you can grab it's plus 850 to win the division. I think that, for my money, they are the second best team in that division right now. So I like them more than Seattle, more than Texas. So I think that's crazy.
And that align, speaking of the Pacotas, the fan graphs, that aligns with Garion, because Pacota's got the Angels at just shy of 86 wins, second to the Houston Astros at 95 wins, and the Angels, the Fangraph projection is at 84, whereas the Astros are at 90 wins. So, yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of how the odds. Talking about the division odds.
Yeah, I think there's just so much helium with Seattle too, right?
And there are people that just want nothing to do with the Angels, right? They're tired of hearing about Mike Trout and how he's the greatest player ever, has all these MVPs and can't ever get to the playoffs. And, Shohei Ohtani is doing things that haven't been done since Babe Ruth, and they won 70 games last year. People, I think, are just tired of it. But this, I think, is their best roster that they've had in quite some time. And maybe they will all get hurt again. I mean, it certainly wouldn't be the biggest shock in the world, but I think that there's value with both of those numbers we talked about.
Yeah. I don't hate it. I mean, I think you're right. There's just sort of a desensitization, as crazy as it sounds, to a team that has Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout, where we're just they'll get hurt somehow. It won't happen. I mean, heck, maybe Anthony Rendon, who was one of the 10 best baseball players on the planet 2 years ago, maybe he stays healthy and is I don't know, 75% of himself when he won the World Series with the Nationals. That'd be crazy to just add that guy to this team. I don't hate it. I would assume
Hunter Renfroe, Brandon Drury, Jared Walsh, and Taylor Ward, who was a borderline all-star last year. They have a lot of bats in this lineup.
Logan O'Hoppy's one of the top catching prospects in all of baseball that they picked up in the Syndergaard deal. They've got at least some really nice potential behind the plate. I would assume they're probably at least 3-1 to even make the playoffs, which I wouldn't mind as a bet either. I would say though, Glash, I've got some long shots that I could talk about if we really want into get into the lottery tickets here.
Sure.
So I mentioned, I think we did this, maybe it was Tuesday or last week, I'm not sure, but I talked about my narrative-based Carlos Correa bet for American League MVP. Let's talk about some regular season leaders, though. So I think one of my favorite bets on the board to lead the league in strikeouts is Christian Javier of the Houston Astros. He's 35-1 right now to lead the league in strikeouts, despite the fact that he had the third best strikeout rate in all of baseball last season. His slider is arguably one of the best pitches in the league. It was a 40% whiff rate pitch when he used it in 2022. I think the thing with Javier, at least when it pertained to last season, was he started the year in the bullpen because the Astros just had such a ridiculous wealth of starting pitching. They do not have that this year. They still have very good starting pitching, don't get me wrong, but they lose Justin Verlander. They've already had to put Lance McCullers. I mean, he's not on the IL yet, but he will be on the IL as soon as 26-man rosters are announced to begin the season. Javier is going to be in the rotation the entire year. And if he gets 30 starts, which he started 25 games last season, he made every start he was scheduled to start after he was put into the rotation. He was also absolutely bananas in the playoffs, if that means anything to anyone. I just think he's one of the best strikeout pitchers in baseball. So the fact you're getting him with odds this good is just a reflection of the fact that people outside of Houston, who are your diehard baseball fans, really haven't caught on to who he is yet, or B, people don't trust that he can throw a full season of innings because he hasn't yet. But the only reason he hasn't is because he hasn't been asked to, and he's still very young. So I think Javier 35-1 is really nice. And then for saves leader, I mean, saves are a ridiculous
real quick on
stat.
Javier. Real quick on Javier. Is he the leader as far as Astros pitchers? I don't see another Astros pitcher ahead of him.
He would be, because I think you would get into like the Framber Valdez's of the world, but he's more of a ground ball pitcher than a strikeout pitcher.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes a lot of sense from that standpoint. I think, just the other thought I just had was, well, with Verlander out, you need your innings eater or someone to be your workhorse, and that aligns. They're going to have to ask more of Javier and Valdez, but
I mean, this is like semantics, right? This is just the book not updating its numbers fast enough, but it's kind of funny that Christian Javier currently has the same odds to lead the league in strikeouts as Tyler Glasnow, who's not going to throw a pitch till May. So I'd maybe hop on that.
Okay.
The other one I really like, just again, like long shot, saves leader, which not the most fun. Oh, do we not have saves leaders?
I don't see it on the sports book right now.
Okay, well, in Ontario, you can bet saves leader. In other select markets, you can bet saves leader. I'll do this one quickly if it's not available everywhere, but Clay Holmes is 30-1 right now, and I know there's a little up and down about whether or not he's going to be able to retain the closing job in New York for the entirety of the season. Clay Holmes was a beast by every advanced metric we have in baseball. He had a little 2-week hiccup in late August, just like every other person on the Yankees did. He came back and pitched well in the playoffs. I think Clay Holmes is going to come out, secure this job in early April for a team that a lot of projection systems have to win the most games of anyone in baseball. So if he has that closer's role the entire year for a team that wins 100 games, it's really hard to fathom why he's 30-1. I think he has the 15th longest odds to lead the league in saves. So I would just hop on Clay Holmes if you're expecting the Yankees to be good this year.
All right. And that would be, that aligns with, that's not a hot take. You don't really need Pacoda or Fangraphs to see that folks think the Yankees are going to be pretty good again.
Number 1 in wins by Pacoda, if you did want to know.
Yeah. What is that? They've got him at, I've got it right here. Sorry.
97, I think.
Okay. Yeah. You guys are right on top of it. So I'm still getting 97.3. Yep. And next behind Houston. Well, next the Mets, and then the Dodgers, and Mets. So Yankees, Mets, Astros, and then the Dodgers at 94.7. Okay.
I think that's bullish on the Mets. And I know that as the resident Met fan,
yep,
I'm going to get accused of just being a glass half empty kind of person. And maybe there is something to that, but I think that the NL East is going to be significantly tougher this year, and I don't think that the Mets are much improved, right? The Mets are going to need their young prospects to make a jump forward if they are going to take a step forward as a team, right? Other than that, they're basically the same unit that they were last year. Justin Verlander is replacing Jacob deGrom, and maybe you get more innings out of him this year, but he's probably not going to be as effective as deGrom was. You've got
despite the league change.
Yeah, I mean, Jacob deGrom.
I'm not saying Verlander's better than deGrom. I understand that, but it's like, don't you factor in Verlander going to the National League?
Well,
as opposed to...
we should say though, like the league change stuff means less now, first and foremost, because there's no longer pitchers batting in the National League, and also because there's going to be more interleague play than we've ever seen.
Good point.
And Jacob deGrom is an alien. I'm not saying that Justin Verlander isn't. The fact that he just won a Cy Young award at like 40 years old certainly is impressive, but when you look at deGrom's numbers from the last 2+ years, it's up there with any stretch of pitching that you'll see in the history of the league. Like the strikeouts are just unbelievable. He was striking out more than 14 batters per 9 innings the past 2 years. Like, so asking Justin Verlander to replicate that is just it's not going to happen. You know, he might be able to, again, give you more innings and comparable production, but it's not going to be the same, you know, frankly, alien stuff that we saw from DeGrom.
I do think it's kind of interesting, though, when we talk about like NL win projections versus AL win projections, like the really easy shorthand. And I'm sure, Glash, this was probably one of the reasons that you really liked betting the Red Sox over 76.5 was the biggest narrative coming out of the schedule balancing was, well, American League East teams rejoice because you now have an easier schedule than you've ever had before. And I think it was very easy.
That was big, and that was big for the Red Sox, just to jump in. That was big for the Red Sox because their record against the division last year was
I know.
If you took that out, they were actually a pretty damn good baseball team.
I mean, they were pretty good against the Yankees, the Rays, and the Orioles. They were just 3-16 against the Blue Jays, but that's neither here nor there. I just think people were like globbing.
Notice that, LaMarca? You couldn't wait to get that in.
I think people were like globbing on the National League East because, again, arguably the toughest division in all of baseball. However, the thing that the American League East has that the National League East does not have is there were really no like out and out bad teams in the American League East. Like we're low on the Red Sox, but low on the Red Sox is a 500 team. The Orioles have one of the best like young cores of talent of any team in baseball. Like every team could finish 500 in the American League East. In the National League East, suddenly you're getting 6 fewer games against the Nationals and 6 fewer games against the Marlins to go to sort of offset the fewer games with the Braves, the fewer games with the Phillies, if you're the Mets or vice versa, if you're one of those other two teams. And the other thing to factor in here is now these National League East teams have to play more American League teams. And I don't think it's outlandish to say that there are more good teams in the American League than there are in the National League. I think there are just more teams trying to make the playoffs. Again, the West has like, if you include the Angels and the Rangers, there are 4 teams trying to make the playoffs in the AL West. The AL Central is whatever, but the NL Central is the same thing. And then there are 5 teams trying to make the playoffs in the AL East. I just think in general, the flattening rules are going to help American League win totals and maybe hurt National League win totals a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, we've talked about this. The Mets' strength of schedule would have increased with the new rules last year. So it would have been a harder schedule. I think the teams that really benefit the most are the teams at the bottom of divisions like the NL East, right? Because now this is why I'm so big on Marlins futures, right? It's 18 less games against the Mets, Braves, and Phillies this year for them.
Yeah.
That's a big difference. So I think that it benefits the teams like that more than it does the teams at the top of the division.
Just looking at the Mets schedule right now, as far as their first handful of American League opponents, they play Oakland at Oakland. They play Detroit.
They play everybody. They play everybody once.
Well, I'm just going in order.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you got to rack up the wins somewhere, right? I mean, you better do well against Detroit and Oakland early, right? I mean, in theory, like those are the games.
There is no lead that the Mets can build that will make their fan base comfortable.
This is true because I remember doing this last summer, and it's like, oh, Mets sliding. Here come the Braves, and LaMarca was nervous, and maybe wasn't wearing the Mets hat on the show.
No, everyone's nervous. Every baseball fan is nervous.
Yeah. All right. Well, to cash a Red Sox win total over just to get 77 wins, that's not that nerve-wracking. That could be fun. There will be some sweats when Kenley Jansen is doing this, and
he might hit the pitch clock. Yeah.
I don't think he's pitched yet. Or
no, he has. He's actually been okay.
Okay, that's recent though. Like I think he just started pitching in games.
Yeah, but I'm just like his first appearance in spring training with the clock, he was fine.
I'd be more worried about the fact that he just was very sketchy last year.
Yeah. He's also like 41, right?
He's old. I mean,
he's not 41, is he?
He just feels like it. He's one of those guys who's been around forever.
Kenley Jansen age. All right, we got a couple more minutes. Let's spend a few minutes. 30, he's 35. But yeah. Yeah, he was sketchy last year. Not the same. Hey, but the Red Sox have a closer, so any spots, each of you have a spot in the NBA you want to touch on quickly before we wrap up? Garion?
Yeah, sure. I I really like the under in the biggest game of the night, Orlando, Charlotte. It's 226.5. Maybe it's gone down even at this point. I think it was like 225.5 last time I checked. Now it's just 225. So it's moving in the direction it probably should be moving. I'd still bet it at 225. You've basically just got two teams that cannot score. They are bottom 8 in offensive rating across their last 10 games. The Hornets surprisingly have been the best defensive team in basketball aside from the Bucks in their last 5 games. And that's kind of the profile the Magic have been the entirety of the season. They're a team that is a bad offensive team, but a very slow and methodical and good defensive team. The Hornets are playing at a fast pace, which might be the reason this number is as big as it is. But I just think you're looking at two teams that can't score the basketball. Since the Hornets have ranked second in the NBA in defensive rating, as I mentioned, that 5-game span, all 5 games they've played in that span have gone to the under. So I think that streak continues tonight.
Lamarca, real quick. How about this? Portland, Atlanta, total at
You
2.
picked the game I was going for.
Atlanta, Portland, totals at 242. Did you know totals that are greater than 240 this season are 56 and 28 to the under?
That's not all that surprising to me. It's this very similar logic in the NFL. When you get big totals, they tend to go under. So
I get a feeling that was not your angle, though.
I'm leaning towards the Portland Trailblazers getting 8.5 points. I don't understand what Atlanta has done to be favored by nearly double digits against anyone. I get that Portland is not a good basketball team, but and they're going to be shorthanded. No Anthony Simons. They're still without Yusuf Nurkic, and for some reason they seem to be tanking. But as long as Damian Lillard is in the lineup, I will take them plus 8.5 points against a really disappointing Hawks team any day of the week.
I can't really argue with it. All right, fellas. I think that's it. That's all the time we got. Good stuff. Enjoy the games tonight. Enjoy Orlando and Charlotte. Oh boy.
Oh, I will.
Oh, that vaunted Hornets defense.
Everyone's talking about it.
They actually didn't
Everyone,
play.
you mean you? Then yeah.
They actually didn't play that bad against Phoenix. The Hornets.
Yeah, I mean, they got an okay defense.
Yeah, I know you took a total, but
Mark Williams, man, turning their defense around.
Okay,
he's been impressive. I like him. All right,
yeah.
Sorry, we'll leave now.
Lamarca, Gary, and you guys have a great weekend, and we look forward to the weekend here, and we look forward to what hopefully is a great weekend for all of you, the people. So this program airs just after 5 Eastern, and again, we've got Madden coming up tonight. We'll be back next week, starting on Monday. You've got the Sweat airing Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern time, so you can tune into that as well. Thanks to Eamon and Tommy P. I just gave him that name. I don't think anyone calls him Tommy P, but we'll go with it for now. This is it's my Madden training. You're not supposed to say anyone's last name, because it's protect everybody, whatever. So that's behind the curtain stuff. For Matt, Lamarca, Gary and Thorne, Brendan Glasheen, you guys have a great weekend. Thanks for watching.